All right, I'd like to welcome everyone to the 961st monthly meeting, March 9th, 2023. Our guest speaker will be Takeda, and he will be talking about the Mittelman-ATMoB Observatory, its history and our progress sort of getting it online. Next, we've got the observing.
The Glenn's cartoons, of course, take no credit for the
I
cartoons.
found this online, and the funny thing is, this is from a postcard. It was around 1917, so even back in those days, people were getting whacked for buying astronomy equipment by people that don't understand.
Can't quite see Olympus Mons on the back of his head, though.
Hey, some of us have the reverse.
Yeah. Well, see, this was 1917, remember? Women didn't do astronomy,
Up to 5
supposedly.
telescopes.
Yeah.
Back in the day, that was, if you think about buying telescopes, telescopes were very expensive 100 years ago. They weren't off the shelf sort of things, and so I can see that. I don't agree with it, but I can see that. Corey, a button side, this
It
button.
is the side button.
There you go, okay. So here's the saying for the go ahead.
There is an extra 5 at the end.
This is from Carl Sagan. If you wish to make an apple pie from scratch, you must first invent the universe. Kind of a nice way of looking at things. I also saw a thing, there's a commercial talks about, they're promoting these gambling, sports gambling now, and they show this thing about what are the chances you had of existing. It starts with the formation of the solar system. You think of all the events, extinction of the dinosaurs, so the mammals could take over. So if you ever feel you're unlucky, just think of the odds that you're here in this seat right now in this room, the odds of you being here. Anytime something could have happened, and that would have been the end of the trail. So we've all won the lottery. Okay, we'll go back.
All right, next one. So the life and times of Glenn Chow.
Wow. Well, I'm going to throw a little plug. I talked a lot about keeping records of your observations. And I put this up here. This is on one of my bookshelves. And it started out back in 1970. Each of these represents notes from a year of observing, notes and sketches. And I can't tell you how valuable they are to me nowadays. And I'll show you that in just a few minutes, because one of the sketches that I'm going to be producing of this galaxy, this current Observers Challenge, I dredged out of one of those books. I had made a sketch with a 3-inch telescope. So this thing has always been coming in handy. And then we'll go to the next slide.
That's the observing.
Steve will take over. Rich will take over.
So, this coming Sunday morning at 2 a.m. daylight savings time starts, which is like, horrible. But there isn't really there really aren't a lot of things going on this month. And so I didn't try to have to scrounge things up, but I like to observe the moon. I know Mario is out there in Zoom land. I love to observe the moon. And if you've ever looked at the moon through a telescope when it's a thin crescent, you know about Earthshine. And with the spring at hand, the ecliptic in the evening stands very high relative to the horizon. It's about 70 degrees. And so with each passing day, the moon is actually fairly high above the horizon at sunset, allowing you a good view of Earthshine. It's pretty to look at with the naked eye. It's wonderful to look at in binoculars. In a telescope, you can actually see the lunar features, illuminated by Earth light. And so it's kind of fun to watch. Also, if there are any stars that are about to be occulted along the dark limb of the moon, it makes for easy to see where the star is relative to the edge of the moon. So the best nights this month are the 23rd to the 25th. On the 23rd and 24th, the moon will be, of course, near Venus. They're in conjunction. On the 25th, Mars passes the Pleiades, pretty close. Might be a nice photo op here. And Mercury reaches greatest elongation east at 19 degrees from the sun in April. 19 degrees is still relatively close to the sun, but if you've been doing the homework I always give you guys, some folks about doing daytime observing, look for Venus, see if you can spot Mercury. See if you can spot it. It's a challenge, but it can be done.
Yeah, these elongations of Mercury and Venus, where the ecliptic is high up from the horizon this time of year. So a springtime elongation of Mercury is a great time to see that planet.
In the evening.
Right.
In the fall, it's a great time
Morning
to watch
time.
the morning
Right.
elongations. All right, next slide. So here's the planet roundup for about the 20th of March. Again, Mercury, April 11th. Venus is 35 degrees east of the sun at -4th magnitude. You can easily find that in the daytime sky. I know the evening of the Jupiter-Venus conjunction last week. Was it last week? Could it have been?
The first.
just recently. I knew it was going to be cloudy, so I went out and found those two guys at about noontime. And Venus was easy. My trick for finding Jupiter, because it was actually, I didn't see it in the eyepiece field at first. I knew I had a wide enough eyepiece field. My trick is to employ an orange filter to improve the contrast a little bit and to jiggle the telescope. I don't know if you've ever tried that when you're doing deep sky stuff looking for faint fuzzies. If you just tap the telescope and get the image to move just a little bit, oftentimes those faint things will pop out into view. And that's actually how I spotted Jupiter, with the orange filter and that little jiggle. I was like, oh, there it is. So that was kind of cool, but you can practice with Venus in the daytime. Jupiter's setting super early in conjunction with the sun on April 11th. Uranus is still up there. Mars is a pathetic little orange fuzzy blob of dot. So it's almost not worth putting a telescope on it, but 2 years and 2 months, it'll be back. What else? The Observer's Challenge.
Okay, Observer's Challenge. It's NGC 2841. It's a galaxy in Ursa Major, rather. And this shows its location. It's not that far from Theta, just a couple degrees away from Theta. And this is one. We didn't get a lot of people sending in observations of this particular one. Doug Paul we'll show you this in a minute. Doug Paul and Mario Mata sent something in. I know it's been lousy weather. If you're an astro imager, do this one. It's amazing. It's a fantastic galaxy. It's about 9th magnitude. It's one that Messier missed because it was very easy in the telescopes I use. And I just wanted to point something out. I talked again about my little notebook. And if you look at this picture, I forget where this came from now, but there's a wide double star up there. And you know how much I'm crazy about double stars. Well, I just sketched this and it was so wide, I didn't think much of it. Now we'll go to the next slide.
Well, let me just say this about that, because this is a pretty easy guy to find.
Yeah.
When you get to these stars here, these are Telrad circles, yes? And so that's basically the finder scope. And these three stars, like Glenn is talking about, those two up there and this one here, you can actually see in the finder scope. And so it's actually a pretty easy galaxy to get to.
Yeah, that NGC thing was right over those two stars you saw. Now this is a sketch, and I reproduced this from that notebook. And the observation was made back in 1976. And I got to stop 24, 34, it's almost a half century ago. It was one of the earliest years. I've been observing maybe 5 years, and I was still using a little Edmund 3-inch scope at that particular time. And in fact, look, 3-inch f10 reflector with a 25 millimeter Ramsden. That's what that scope used back in those days. It was pretty basic, but it did the job. So I was able to see that galaxy, and there's that double star. And I didn't identify it as a double star back then, but just for the heck of it, I went to that Washington double star catalog. I had the coordinates of that, and it turns out it is a catalog double star. It's very wide. It's called ARN71, and I looked at what does the ARN stand for, and there's an astronomer named Arnold, but a lot of his observations were around 2005, early this century, and the first measurement of that double star was made back about 100 years ago, so I'm not sure what ARN stands for, but it's a wide double star in that same field of view. And then I was able to sketch this star, which is about a 9th magnitude star. So this is what the close-up is over here. This is with a 10-inch. And there's that star right there up here, and there's another star. That's about 11th magnitude that I didn't pick up with that little telescope. But now I want you to look at this picture. And we're going to go to the next slide. I think it's either Maury or Doug Paul's, but there's that triangle. There's that star. There's the galaxy. And there's that 11th magnitude star. So what I saw with that 3-inch and with a 10-inch was just this middle part. And it tells me how bad light pollution has gotten. That I see this telescope, I see this galaxy with a 3-inch telescope back in 1976. And then I get to a 10-inch telescope, and I'm not seeing much more, just another star. And what I did see was this is very concentrated. There's very stellar nucleus to this galaxy. But you look at the detail on that, and that's Mario's picture. Let's look at Doug's, and Doug's here to give us the particulars. I think you're Doug. Yeah, there you go.
I'm here. That's 4 hours, 6-inch aperture, 1200 millimeter focal length, Canon 80D DSLR.
Nice.
So if you have any images, if you're an imager, and that's people, of course, that happen to be watching this online, check it out. We still have a chance. It's an amazing,
Yeah, that's a nice. I want to
site.
back one slide for a second. It's a flocculent galaxy.
Yeah. And by the way, that star is often mistaken for a supernova in the galaxy. That's why they always warn there's an 11th magnitude star nearby. Again, visually, I was able to see about this part right here. I couldn't make out those other
We're gonna have to
parts.
look at Sky Safari Pro. Because see that star right there, I want to see what magnitude that is. So I can maybe see it, because that would be the one that I think with a big telescope, you'd go, oh, look, supernova.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But
It's classified as a flocculent, kind of like the sunflower galaxy.
Yep.
And then I think we have a
There are
preview
no bright supernovas out there right now.
coming up. This is going to be tough. I haven't had a chance to look at it yet because it's either been the moon or it's been cloudy skies. This is NGC 3044. It's in the constellation Sextans, which is just below Leo the Lion and just a little bit above the constellation Hydra. Here's a finder chart for it. And it's about 4 degrees kind of northwest of Alpha Sextantis, which is about a fourth mag. I tell you what, this is going to be tough even for star hoppers because you don't have a bright star to guide on this. And so it might be a little bit tricky, but it's not that far from Rigel. So you kind of check out these stars and then look for a star down here, or maybe aim your finder scope until you find the brightest star in that area. It's going to be a challenge just to find the area. And then this is a 12th magnitude galaxy. So I don't expect I'm going to see it with my little 3-inch telescope, but I'll probably start with a 10-inch, and then I might see if I can spot it with a 10, see if I can go down to a 6-inch. I want to see what's the smallest aperture I can pick it up with. Out in the desert area where you have magnitudes even 7 skies, there are people who probably could see this with a 60-millimeter refractor that are eagle-eyed and have the clear skies, but I'd say realistically, you want at least a 10-inch telescope to pick this out. We'll probably check in the Clubhouse.
Oh, definitely. We'll look at this with the 25-inch, but look what you get.
It's an edge on. That's about 4 arc minutes across and maybe a half arc minute wide. So it's a nice edge on galaxy. It makes it worthwhile. And again, Doug's already got a picture.
Yep.
And I know you'll be taking an even
That's a 0.9 by 0.7 degree field of view there.
0.9. Yeah. So anyway, that's our challenge that's coming up. In the meantime, keep looking up. Clear skies, stay healthy.
I think there's one more slide.
Oh, there is. Okay. Oh, that's right.
Last
Sorry.
month I mentioned the possibility of doing some member nights. And so the moon is new on March 21st, and I thought the weekend of the 17th, 18th will be open for business at the Clubhouse. Maybe I'll send out some emails and I'll put it on the event calendar, but I was thinking about 3 ways to perhaps induce or entice members to come to the Clubhouse. And one would be to run a full Messier marathon. I'm not going to run a full Messier marathon. I can't. I'd be dead. But I wouldn't mind doing a Messier 10K run. And Glenn's double star marathon is something I'd like to try also. And the way Glenn and I talked about this was just have it from 7 o'clock at night to midnight. So you don't have to kill yourself to stay up all night. You're going to fail anyway because you're not going to get M30. So there's no sense going the whole marathon because you're not going to get 110, right? Not that early. And if you wait a couple of weeks, you're never going to get M74. So, it's a tough thing. It's a tough game to play. But I think it'd be fun just to see from sunset to midnight how many Messier objects you could lock. I want to do Glenn's, I was saying to Glenn, I want to do the double star marathon, at least till midnight. I'll bring my 3-inch Unitron. And we'll play with that. That does a beautiful job with doubles.
Yeah, just talking about this for a second. The articles I've written for Astronomy Magazine, there were 2 that got the most responses. And one was a double star marathon when I came up with that a couple of years ago. And I got about 60 or 70 requests from individuals and from clubs. It's just, they wanted to do something besides the Messier marathon. So there were clubs that tried to do this double star marathon. And just a thing on the actual full marathon, I did the last time I tried it, I tried for M30, which was stupid. I had 99. I just wanted to get that 100th one. And I forgot about M15. It was right up there. I could have got that easily. And by the time I realized that, it was already getting too late. I thought I saw a smudge, but I really couldn't count it. So I was stuck at 99. And like Rich, I'm not going to do an all-nighter anymore. So, but anyway, you're welcome. I'll try to put something out. If people are interested, I'll get some charts. I got a listing for the double stars. So I'm going to give you the list. You can see how many you can find. I'm going to try it out myself if weather permits.
Yeah.
And now I guess I can say keep looking up, right?
I think so. Although Corey said there might be one extra slide.
Okay.
So I got email from Dick about actually it was on the news.
I
not
saw
too
you
long
on
ago.
the news.
So we've got the video. Hopefully, fingers
Oh.
crossed. We'll see if this works.
All right, I'm going to sit down and let you
Temperament.
play that. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Randy.
What happened was, there were a couple of nights when the Starlink satellites were quite visible. So I went up to Robbins Farm Park in Arlington, and I got there just as the TV news crew was getting there. So they set up their video camera under a tree. And I told them that I didn't think that was the best place for them to be. So I took them up to the top of the hill in the park. And there was like a family there with a 9-year-old kid, and me, and the TV crew. And so they interviewed the 9-year-old kid first. He had a few seconds of airtime. I got a few seconds of airtime. And then Professor Benzel of MIT, who I think is retired now, but he was also on for a little while.
Thank you for the on-site troubleshooting.
A technical marvel.
But as WBZ's Tammy Mutasa explains, others see a celestial traffic jam.
David and Lisa, tonight was very spectacular. All you had to do was look up and you saw those bright lights. Pretty amazing for a lot of people, but experts say not everybody is happy to see them. Oh, I see them, I see them. A marvel of bright moving lights illuminating the dark sky. With their eyes looking up, stargazers came looking for a light show.
Yeah, I would definitely say it was worth it.
It comes up along here, and you can see Castor and Pollux.
Dick Coolish has been an amateur astronomer since the 1970s. He was amazed.
I have never seen anything like that because I haven't watched them before. That was really spectacular. I was very pleased to see that.
Can you see it on there?
Astronomers say those lights are Starlink satellites. They've been launched into space by Elon Musk's company, SpaceX. The satellites help boost internet access pretty much anywhere in the world. Eventually, 12,000 satellites will be in the sky.
Almost always you see just one. So to see this many is really quite amazing. It was a very spectacular thing.
Experts like MIT professor and astronomer Richard Binzel say there's pros and cons to the satellites. The pros, more internet connectivity.
That's a valuable thing.
The cons, more stuff in space creating obstruction.
Whether they kind of get in the way of serious astronomical observations, whether they overcrowd the space and you have risk of collision of satellites with one another. Those are some of the cons and some of the factors that lead to these objects being controversial.
With the way forward still going back and forth, enthusiasts encourage everyone to do this.
My usual recommendation to people is just keep looking up.
Now, if you've missed those satellites, they are expected to be visible again on Wednesday and Thursday. In Arlington, Tammy Mutasa, WBZ News.
It is always interesting to see him.
And I think the timing is interesting, right? Because over the past week, we've heard about these stories of strange things in the sky.
So we're looking up anyway.
And you're like, what is it this time?
Wait a sec.
Just Starlink.
Above.com has got a pretty good link to the visibility of those satellites. And my experience with them has been they're a challenge to predict as far as what you're going to actually see. It has to do with, they're relatively small satellites. It has to do with
Flat.
they've got a flat solar panel and a little boxy bottom part. But it all depends on how soon after launch they're going to be visible. What's the lighting like? In other words, I must have to stand up to show you. Like, if you ever watch the International Space Station coming up from the horizon this way, after sunset, where the sun is down here, right? When it first starts to come up on the horizon, the space station typically looks dim because what you're looking at is you're basically looking at the nighttime side of the space station, yes? Because the sunlight's down here, shining at this object up here, and you're standing here looking at it. And as it passes overhead, usually it's as it crosses the meridian, and now the sunlight now you're looking at the fully illuminated space station, it typically looks brighter. Same thing with these Starlink satellites. They're small. They're trying to make them as dark as possible. But if you catch them just right, it's as much as I hate what they're going to do to astronomy, to see this train of satellites, 50 or 60 of them, in a line this long, crossing the sky all in tandem. It's pretty amazing. And if for nothing more, be aware that they're up there so that when your neighbors ask you, what was that? You can explain it to them. You can explain the good and the bad. I think the internet for all thing, it's money, right? It's cash. We can't call Elon up and ask him to stop, please, because they've got billions of dollars invested in this, and there's tons of money made on this. And so I think we have to learn to live with him. But he's basically building a chain link fence around the Earth with satellites. The night you were out, they were had already spread out a little bit.
Yeah.
And so they were, a pretty substantial.
They were about a degree apart, I think.
Yeah.
And I think there were supposed to be 36 of them or something like that.
Yeah, and they were fainter because they're putting them up into their final orbit.
Yeah, they might have been magnitude 2 or
Yeah.
something like that.
Yep. So anyway, I think they're kind of fun to watch, but
I would rather people watch the moon than Starlink satellites.
I think there'd be a law in the club about that.
I'm happy I've never seen them yet.
That you know of. If not, we'll get to the main talk. So we've got our very own Al Takeda talking to us about the Mittelman-ATMoB. So the family of the late ATMoB member David Mittelman graciously donated his rooftop observatory to the amateur telescope makers of Boston in 2020. And Al will discuss the history of the observatory, the enclosure, the equipment, data being collected, and the ATMoB group involved that is sort of bringing it to life and getting it up to speed. Many of us know Al, but for those who don't, Al Takeda is a 25-year member of ATMoB. He's held the position of secretary and member at large, and he's a very active member of various current and past committees, including the Clubhouse, the newsletter, history, and most recently, the Mittelman-ATMoB Observatory Committee. Al enjoys working with the electronic fields of data communication, telecommunications, and audio processing. He's currently an acoustic technician at Bose, and for several years, he was lab manager at the Harvard University Physics/School of Engineering and Applied Science. Al also has experience in building and operating remote observatories, having helped commission the Bridgewater Hill Observatory in Vermont. So please welcome Al.
Okay, so my talk this evening is going to be about the Mittelman-ATMoB Observatory. And as we see here, we have Chris Elledge and Bruce Berger actually in the observatory. And so let's just start talking about it. So I'm going to give a brief history of the David Mittelman Observatory. Now, David Mittelman wanted to make it, an observatory, and so he decided he needed some help to do it. So Alan Salisky and Sons, Alan Salisky, Aaron Salisky, and David Salisky were recruited in order to put an observatory on his property. Well, David had a very unusual request, and normally you put it in the yard and other places, but he wanted it on the roof of his house. And so, back up, sorry. Yeah, so he wanted it up here, and there's not a lot of space up there. And so when you actually look at the observatory, you notice it's very small. It's a very small package. So Alan drew up the plans for this, and you notice there's a lot of things going on here. If you look at the bottom, you'll notice there's some steel plate, steel I-beams below. And actually, that's one of the first things you have to do. You have to shore up the building in order to hold up the structure without having it collapse. You can see the I-beam sitting up here on top. So one of the first things you have to make the platform. There's not going to be a pier for this observatory. So he had to make a platform, and so he had to have a design. So he got his good friend Paul Sebring to design this platform for underneath the observatory, the enclosure. And what's interesting about Paul Sebring is this is Paul Sebring Sr. He was the first director of Haystack Observatory, and actually is one of the people involved in our clubhouse to allow ATMoB to have the clubhouse to be used instead of having the fire company come by and burn it down. And by the way, we're not sure exactly which is Paul Sebring Jr., but it's one of the boys here. He's the one that actually, designed the platform. So it's come full circle. Now Paul Sebring Sr. was the director, and now we have the Mittelman-ATMoB Observatory on the clubhouse, in Westford site. So Alan wanted to get this built, so he went to A.G. Miller in Springfield, Massachusetts, to actually construct this platform. And here's the top of it, covered. And what it is, it's actually being placed underneath the enclosure. Now, the enclosure is a 7-foot by 7-foot roll-up observatory. It's a teleport from PureTech. And it's actually it's a custom-made observatory. So it's an enclosure. We call it an enclosure because we really can't call it a building. Because according to the rules of Groton, in which we got the building permit, we don't need a building permit if it's an enclosure, but we do if it's a building. So another thing you have to build, so Alan had to build this platform to raise the telescope and of course the mount up above the enclosure to be able to see. So this is actually 4 piers that, now granted, PureTech makes a platform very similar to this. And I actually saw the patent. There's actually 4 screws. There is actually a screw embedded inside, which then raises the platform. It's very smooth if you've ever seen it operate. So here's Alan Salisky, David Mittelman inside holding the telescope, and John Briggs on the outside where they were actually putting this thing together inside a warehouse. There's another view. And actually you see the platform down below, and they're actually testing the platform to make sure that it does raise and lower properly. Well, on the day they put it up, of course, you have to use a crane to get it on top of the roof. And then now here it is, actually on top of the roof itself. And it was put up September 26, 2011. Unfortunately, David got sick. He got brain cancer and actually passed away in 2017. So it was you only used it for just a few years. So the family decided to donate this observatory. And so they donated it to ATMoB. And these are all the components that came with it. The PureTech enclosure, the reinforced floor, the pier, the mount, etc. So all of these things were put in. But you notice a few things missing. Now, we do have a computer, but the computer was kind of old, and we don't have any cameras. So we actually had to purchase other things to make this observatory operational. So this is our goal. The ATMoB will use the observatory to allow scientific research in collaboration with schools, educational institutions, scientific groups, and ATMoB members. Well, in 2020, I guess a little before, the house was sold. And so they had to get the observatory off of the building, and of course, they needed another crane to get it off the building again. Bring it down. So it eventually ended up at Alan Salisky's house until we did a little more work to the property at ATMoB and at the Clubhouse. So let's talk about equipment. So this is a plane wave CDK, corrected dial Kirkham, 17-inch diameter scope. And here's all the technical jargon. It's it's a 17-inch, it's 2,000 millimeters of focal length, f6.8, carbon fiber, and all of that. It's carbon fiber truss. And let's actually talk about what's actually designed. So here's a corrected dial Kirkham. It's got ellipsoid primary mirror, got a spherical secondary mirror, and in the tube are the corrective optics. It's a lens group. The software BISC Paramount ME mount is a German equatorial mount. It can hold about 150 pounds or 68 kilograms. It's got spring-loaded RA and deck gears, through the mount wiring, 5 arc seconds of periodic error. And one thing, these mounts are built for automation. Matter of fact, if you look around the world, a lot of these mounts are in major observatories, in sky survey setups. So, and they're used because they were designed from the ground up to be automated. Well, it didn't come with a camera. So we as a group had to figure out, well, what kind of camera should we use? Shall we use CCDs, which are the old and tried and true technology, charge-coupled devices? Or do we go with the new CMOS cameras? And so there was a lot of discussion about that. Shall we tried and true, or let's go to the future? Well, I think so we needed help. So here are the objectives. What do we want to do with the camera? And that's all about when we get a new telescope, a new camera, any equipment, what are you eventually going to do with it? So what it is, we want to do variable star measurements. We're going to do cataclysmic star studies, exoplanet surveys, gamma ray burst images perhaps, and other miscellaneous. I don't know what we're going to use it for in the future, but we put it on there as miscellaneous. And oh, by the way, we still want to do some pretty picture astrophotography with it. We don't want to try to constrict our usage of this observatory. So we needed help. So we went to Arnie Hendon and Gary Walker. They're part of the AFESO. They, Arnie Hendon and Gary Walker have worked on a lot of the automated observatories that AFESO uses. And so they have got extensive knowledge of equipment, cameras, what's good, what's bad, what is AFESO using, what other professional groups are using. So their input was extremely valuable. So eventually, going back and forth, this is one of the cameras that AFESO uses. It's the QHY 600 with U3 G20. It's the professional version. I'll explain that in a minute. So basically, it's a full frame chip, 36 by 24 millimeters. It's a backside illuminated CMOS monochrome sensor, very tiny square pixel, 3.76 microns. 60 megapixels, so each of our images are extremely big. They're almost 30 megabytes in size, every photo. Now I can think, in the night, that's a lot of photos you're taking pictures of all night, so we need a lot of hard drive space. USB 3, and what makes it professional is that it's upgradable to a fiber link. Should we want to hook it up to a fiber link, we can do that. We decided not to eventually, but it was a possibility. So we bought one of the early bird models, which did not have the fiber link, but they said that we could have put it in if we wanted to. So here are the specs. Read noise, 3.7 electrons, very low. Dark current is 0.0022, at minus 20. It gets a little more on the dark current as it gets, a little bit warmer, but, still not bad. And of course, we're getting analog to digital conversions, 16-bit at 1:1, and then 18-bit at 2x2 binning. And so let's explain binning. Well, if you look at the left, bin 1 means it's a single pixel. Bin 2 means there's 2x2, and et cetera. Bin 3 is 3x3 matrix, et cetera, so forth, so forth. Well, we have to worry about image scale because we don't want to undersample or oversample. And what happened, we looked at it and say, wow, if we use binning 1 by 1 at 2,000 millimeters, we're getting a 0.5 image scale, which is not so good. So we decided, okay, well, binning 2 by 2 for all of our images gives us 0.8 on the image scale, but that's also at like 1900 millimeters. Well, how do we get there? First, before we get there, so one of the things is we want a big field. So this is a target field for SS Cygni, variable star. And we want to have stars around it in the field because we need what they call a comparison star and a comp star. Comp star and a check star. So we want a big field. So by using, in this case, a focal reducer, which we got with the system, along with binning it by 2 by 2, we get more sensitivity and we get a very wide field. And this is, by the way, this is the back focus diagram that we made up to figure out the exact back focus, because if you want the stars across the field to be nice and round and not elongated or with coma, you need to get that spacing right. So here's an example. So with this camera, binning 2 by 2 with the focal reducer attached, you can get a picture of the whole moon. So it's like on average 0.7 degrees on average. And so it can get the entire moon in there if it should so choose. And another example, if we use M33 as an example, we can get the entire M33 in here. So we need to get a filter wheel. So we decided to get one of the largest filter wheel that QHY had, nine positions. And we'd get them with 50 millimeter unmounted filters. And so here's the diagram of if there's a lot of filter slots. And we were even thinking about if we wanted more filters, we could actually, Arnie Hendon suggested we could actually stack the filter wheels. I had known that you could do that, but we can. So we decided, well, let's get some really good filters. Let's get what AVSO recommends, which are the Astrodon filters. They're probably, Astrodon's probably one of the best filter companies in the world. And so we thought, okay, well, they use the Astrodon Johnson Cousins filters, and this is using the wavelengths that they use, the nice curved filters, and that's what AVSO was using at the time. Unfortunately, Farpoint, which is the vendor for Astrodon filters, they've been back ordered forever. It started right around the pandemic, and it never got any better. We have our orders still into Farpoint. We don't think we'll ever get the filters. They're just not building them. Nobody's getting Astrodon filters right now. So we've decided, at least for some of the filters, we're going to go with the Sloan filter set. And this is again in consultation with Arnie Hendon and Gary Walker, because they're starting to look at some of these Sloan filters in order to use them. So they're trying to qualify them now. And they're dragging their feet on that. So it's going to take a while for them to get this whole spec hammered down. But we did get it filtered anyway. We got a Sloan R, and so here are actually filters that we actually got purchased. So the B&V filters are Johnson Cousins and a square top with the Custom Scientific, and we're actually borrowing these filters, the B&V filters. We did purchase the Sloan I filters, the chroma filter, and we did get the Sloan R filter from Astrodon. So we finally did get an Astrodon photometric filter. And then, of course, we were able to get the narrowband filters, the hydrogen alpha, oxygen 3, sulfur 2, from Astrodon, as well as the luminance L2 filter. And we also made up a black opaque filter so we can take darks within the camera. And that was actually built by Bruce Berger. Next, site preparation. Well, here it is. We have this observatory. We got all this equipment. We still need to put it on their site. So one thing that ATMoB knows how to do is dig holes and pour concrete. We do this very well. Ask Steve Clarity about this. They'll tell you. So we started to work on the site. We put in the piers to put in the platform, poured the concrete into the pier, into the sonotubes. And then eventually we started digging more holes in order to put the communication lines, the power lines. So we actually we're piggybacking all the lines of power, everything from the other observatories. And here we are, the whole group, we're measuring for the platform to put the enclosure on top. So finally, moving day comes. We've gotten the site prepared. So at Alan's house, he actually took the took the telescope off the mount, took it apart, and then he started to move it. We put it on a truck, brought it over to the clubhouse, took it off with the forklift, with MIT's help, by the way. These are all MIT personnel. And again, we needed another crane to lift it, to put it up onto the platform. This enclosure has more frequent flyer miles than I do. Yeah, and so we bolted it down. Aaron Salisky is bolting it down to the platform now. And there it is. It's on the site now. Still a lot more work to go. Now we got to mount the telescope, plug in the cameras, put in all the wires, and dress it up. Now, one thing about dressing wires, you always want to try to really dress your wires and attach it, make sure it's all secure, because you don't want to have a robotic automated telescope hanging up on any wires, because this mount will literally pull out the wires. They will pull the connectors right out of the instrument. They will destroy it. And matter of fact, you wouldn't want to be inside this enclosure while the thing's moving, because it'll take your head off. So here's Bruce Berger. He's wiring up. So he's actually running AC power, extra AC power. At one time, this was a blank wall. now we're putting in all kinds of, USB hubs, power connections, extension, power extensions, USB hubs, you name it, motor controls. In this case, Bruce is putting in, we put in a fiber network. So right now, this observatory has the link to the clubhouse is to a fiber network. It's not, we have what do you call it, a Ethernet line that goes there. We have power lines, but we have fiber, and this fiber was actually put in by Intervale Technologies. This is Bruce Berger, our club member, he does contract work with this company. And so he asked the company, can he maybe donate some fiber for the observatory? And they said, sure. At first, they were just going to put the fiber in, but we have to maybe pay for the fiber, but then they would do the work. They donated everything. They donated, so we have pair of fibers for every observatory now. They donated the wires. They donated expertise. They ran the wires. So this is the plug for that. So other pieces of equipment, the Boltwood cloud rain detector, and you have to detect rain if it's for your remote observatory, because there's nobody going to be on site to close the roof if it's raining and you don't know about it, especially in the middle of the night. We also have a weather station, the Davis weather station, wind anemometer, all of that, to know the conditions on site. And we were getting tired of having to climb stairs to get inside the building, inside the enclosure. So we actually made a nice porch to be able to get out inside. Well, while this is done outside, we have to worry about how do we control this thing inside the clubhouse. And remember, this is remote, so it's going to be done via the internet. So we don't even have to be at the clubhouse to make this work. But we still have to work on it. Well, this is how it used to be. This was the old electronics room, and of course, it's not going to work as a control room. So I decided to have it clean. I cleaned it up, and thing is, what do we want? So we needed some ideas. What do we want this observatory, the control room to look like? So we borrowed some ideas. Oh, NASA maybe, or maybe Keck 2, the MNT. So we looked at all these observing control rooms. They said, well, we don't quite have the budget to build this, but we can make a small version. So I did a rendering, said, well, what would it look like if we were to put that in here? And so I did a render. This is what I'd like it to look like. 3 monitors, a desk to work on, with a plasma display on top, because we did get a plasma display, 50-inch plasma donated by Alan Salisky. He had an extra one laying around, so we could use it. So I went and I actually looked at, I drew this up, made all the measurements, what will fit here, what size of the table, and we should put in here, and where do we put the equipment? And so this is the real thing. This is what we have now. This is 3 monitors. We have a plasma display, which has weather information and other things. And that desk, by the way, I built that desk. It's much more sturdy than the other desk. Anyway, so we have inside the enclosure, we have this camera, this webcam, and so we can actually monitor, what's going on inside. So if there's a problem, we can actually see, is the roof actually closed? Is the telescope actually still sitting in its proper position? We don't know that without any feedback. So this is James Chamberlain, another member. And so right now he's putting up the off-sky camera. We decided we want to see what's up in the sky. So the left camera is actually a meteor camera. It's still being worked on. And the camera that he's installing now is the all-sky camera. And here's a view of the all-sky camera. And you can actually see, you can see Orion, the Orion constellation down below. And this is, of course, a nice clear night. Well, that's fine. It's nice, clear, but we want to see if it's like this. Are there clouds up there? And under what conditions? Because we're not the boltwood is not, we haven't quite calibrated the boltwood yet, so we don't know when it says, oh, it's cloudy, is it just partly cloudy, or is it all cloudy, or is it? We know it's raining, but we don't know about the other conditions. So we are actually still turning the thing on and turning it off, and the humans are still making the decision whether we're going to open it up or not. And here's James Chamberlain. He's actually looking at the plasma display, which is actually giving like the clear sky calendar, and then other weather data that we actually pull from the internet. It's actually an Arduino device. It's currently down. We have to work on it again, but we will eventually work on it again. Software, of course, all this software we need to keep it running. We actually had to purchase new licenses for this software, some of it. Of course, Windows 10, SkyX Pro, MaxMDL, ACP, the weather monitor, and ASCOM. ASCOM is the glue that holds everything together. It's a communication protocol for astronomy, and it ties all of these programs together and all the hardware together to work together, to allow to observe. This is the SkyX Pro. This is a planetarium program. It uses to move the telescope, plate solve, and other things dealing with movement of the telescope. MaxMDL is the camera control software. And ACP, this is the brains of the system. ACP, you can, right in the beginning, we could actually put targets in, and you can see the extensive target list on the left of all the targets we actually put in. ACP, once you put in the targets, it does the thinking for you. It will decide whether an object is below the horizon or above the horizon. It will say, I want to do this target first, that target next. Oh, this is a high priority target. Let's say it's a science project versus a pretty pictures. So it will meter out all of the various commands and tell the telescope, do this first, do this next. Oh, I'm going to shut down for a little while because I'm waiting for something to rise in the east. So this is the brain. The scheduler is the brains for the whole operation. It does this automatically without any user intervention. As it says, ACP schedule automatically picks the time from various constraints, and here are some constraints. Not all of them, so some of them. The minimum object altitude, we say, okay, make sure that it's above a certain altitude because we don't want to look at the muck near the horizon. We look like that's the air mass, the amount of air that we along line of sight. Minimum distance from the moon. Maybe if you're doing narrowband, you might be able to have the moon in the area, but maybe if you're doing other scientific work, the brightness of the moon may affect the image. And of course, priority is given to scientific data acquisition. So here's actually a script from ACP, and Chris he does all the scripting for this system. He's done amazing work to allow everything to work together seamlessly. And sometimes we've had to tweak some of the scripting because things didn't work out. It's like, okay, we want to make sure it doesn't go below a certain location. We don't want to hit the side of the building. We want to make sure one operation goes first and the one next, et cetera, et cetera. So scripting is awfully necessary. We're tweaking the whole system. So the operation. So let's see if this will work. So every evening at a certain time, this starts up. Again, without any user intervention. I'll run the movie and see it opening up. And what this will do is open up, raise the platform up to its position to get ready, and it will then stop and wait for ACP to say, okay, I will start the imaging run at a certain point, and it will do the targeting, take the picture, and we'll talk about that in a moment.
The really cool thing, Al, is that's about as much noise as it makes.
Yes, it's very, there's no audio here, but it's
Dead quiet.
dead quiet. Now, I've been able to tune my ears to hear it, so I know when it does open. All right.
Does it actually come up before the sun goes down?
Oh, yeah. And it does it automatically at a certain point. Now, we've been turning it on and off depending on weather conditions. Sometimes we'll say, we're not gonna open up because we think in the middle of the night it's gonna rain. And we don't wanna make a mistake and have the thing open when it starts raining. And we hope it closes automatically, but we're not that trusting yet. We're still working on it. So there's some things that we're still doing manually. All right, well, here's the startup procedure. This is a general, and there are some details that I'm not going to discuss, but it then, ACP, the software turns on and says, okay, it's ACP here, the SkyX here, maximum DL, the camera control. Is everything turning on? Is everything operating? First thing it does an initial focus. This is at night, when the stars are out. And it rechecks it about every 3 hours in general. Then the ACP schedule will look at it and say, okay, what's on my target plan? Everything's in the plan. And then slews the target of study. It then does a plate solve. A plate solve is location of the sky, where I'm going to be imaging. It will then takes a picture, characterize where the stars are, and say, okay, I know where I am. And now I'm going to move the scope to center the target. It then changes filters to whatever you're going to do, and starts imaging. And what we do is we download the images to the proposers. This is the user that requests the data to the Google Drive. And because we are a nonprofit, Google will allow, is unlimited. We hope it's going to be for a while because we are putting a lot of data up there. And so what's nice is, let's say I am the proposer, I put in a plan, and then I'm given an account. We give people an account onto the Google Drive, and then you go to the Google Drive, you pull the data. So basically what you're doing, we're giving you the data. Basically, you ask for a location, a target. It will dump the data down. We'll give you the calibration frames that are needed, the dark frame, the light frames, et cetera, light frame, bias, et cetera, all the calibration frames. It's up to you to do work on that data. You have to use your own software. You have to use your own tools, your own computer. The only thing we ask is that you give us credit for use of this observatory, the Mittelman-ATMoB Observatory. And you take credit for the data. You can publish it. You can make, do papers with it. That's fine. But you have to give us credit for you to get the data. That's all we ask. There's no payment. Aside from being a club member, it's the best $35 you'll ever invest. Okay, and then of course, when it's finished, the ACP schedule says, okay, what's next on the plan? Does this automatically. No user intervention on this. So it sends us an email. Now, right now we have the notifications turned on. So we see everything that occurs. We know if it's open, we know what plan is occurring. Like this plan, it shows we're doing M67, we're doing V838, Monoceros, and it does that. And of course, in this case, it failed for whatever reason.
Clouds.
Clouds, yeah, that's possible. And then it says, okay, I'm gonna close because I don't have any more work. Actually, this observatory is underutilized at the moment. So that's part of the reason I'm giving this talk, to give us a little more buzz on this so that people can give us a plan. And we'll talk about in a minute about submitting plans. So the shutdown, it slews to the zenith. We found that in order to prevent this telescope from hitting, there are certain positions that the telescope is in, that if it tries to go back to its home position, it'll hit the building. It'll hit the side of the enclosure. And that's not a good thing, because it'll stop and then it's not going to go. And we have to manually move it, and hopefully the motors will move it to, we hope, the home position, and to get it to park, et cetera, et cetera. So we found out we have to run, again, risks with the script files. Do we have to go to a home position near the zenith in a certain rotation, and then it will park the telescope, and we'll see that it will be an IR detector that shows when it is parked, you know, we have a lot of sensors here. You know, we have sensors for the roof, we have sensors for the mount, we've got sensors everywhere to try to characterize what this thing is doing, because we're not there. So if we're not there to see what it's actually doing, we need sensors to try to tell us what it actually is doing. We need the cameras, the webcam. We like to see what it's doing. The roof closes, and at that point, then we take our darks, the biases, and the flat fields. We have a flat panel. Actually, when it goes to its park position, lowers down into its park position, that's actually pointing right at the flat field light box. So it's actually taking flats when it's in its park position. And all of this is sent up to the Google Drive, all that data. Well, we hate to see this word. It's serious observatory problem. It's sent to via email. And of course, I program my email to actually send to my phone. So I can be anywhere, and I get that buzz, and I look at my phone like, uh-oh, we got a problem. And actually, one day it came up with this problem during the middle of the day, and I actually had to call Chris and find out, why is it giving me this message in the middle of the day? It shouldn't be on. Actually, I think somebody was doing something at the observatory, and so that, and the person that was doing work obviously disregarded some of the protocols and it sent out this message, even though there wasn't really a problem. I show this photo because you notice next to Bruce, he's right up against the back of the wall. And notice how close that telescope is to next to that wall. So we have to characterize not only the horizon limits, but we have to characterize the building limits, you know, the enclosure limits. Because we can't have that, because once it goes down, it's going to trip those, I guess, the senses the current, and will shut down. And once it shuts down, it's a bear to try to get it back to, you know, in the position that is good. And especially if you're doing it remotely. Of course, I had to do this one time. One time I got a message, and there was nobody around, so I actually drove from my place to the observatory at 10 o'clock at night. Because I tried to use, using the remote desktop to be able to go in by the internet and see if I could move the telescope to a position that it would recognize and then do its shutdown procedure. And that didn't work. So I actually had to drive to the observatory, go to the clubhouse, open the door, get in there, disengage and move it to a position, its home position. And then once it recognized it, it then went and parked and closed the roof. Fortunately, it's been a lot more stable recently. So the last 6 months, it's been reasonably stable. So here's that park sensor, here's one of the sensors. And this is a problem. If it loosens up, gets out of alignment, see, it sends a beam up to this guy, this retroreflector up there. If they're not lined up, it doesn't know that it's home. So it can't close. It'll stop. It says, all right, I can't do it. And sends an error message out. And then we have to try to figure out, can we move the scope so that it's nice and homed or not, or we have to go and visit the site. So there's another problem. We had a bit of a problem. We had a mouse problem. They found the inside of the mount was a very nice home, nice and warm, no people around, there's nobody around. And they just built the nest, it would have been okay, dirty and stinky. The mice decided that the wires were tasty. And that's a problem today. A lot of these wires, and these aren't, but a lot of the new environmentally friendly wires are not made of corn and bio products, and the mice love it. The rodents love these things today. So anyway, they literally chomped through the wires, chomped through the ribbon cable, and you see the ribbon cable here. They chomped half of it. And there's another ribbon cable. Fortunately, I was able to
Did
fix
they
the
find
wire.
any 110 wires?
No, they didn't, unfortunately.
That's bad.
Yeah.
They would have stopped them.
Yeah. So here's another wire. So I had to clean up all the wires. So here's how they got in. That opening in the bottom where you pass all the wires through to pass it through the mount and up to the telescope. Huge opening. Mice, all it takes is a dime-sized hole. That's all it takes, and they can get in. So Bruce put a plate up there. to try to keep the mice out. And I actually put some more aluminum foil to try to keep them out. It caused another problem. It caused a drag problem because the bottom of this thing right here, well, it scraped against the bottom of that metal, the black metal plate. We found out we're looking at our images, and we noticed, hey, we're getting a lot of these unusual streaks, the worm, the bearing is dragging or something. At first we thought maybe the worm gear's loose. It wasn't. Or maybe the bearings are going bad. We suspected it because they were a little old, they were kind of loose. No, it wasn't, it was that plate. So we ground the plate, Bruce ground the plate smaller, and now it goes around very well. Here's another problem. Software, hardware, operating system, you get the blue screen of death, or something similar to it. And of course, fortunately, we have the ability, because everything's internet controlled. Even the power strips are controlled through the internet. So we can reboot the computer by just repowering the power strip. Even with all those problems, within the last 2 years, we've gotten all these targets. So here's Pierre Florent, and here's all of his targets. All these variable stars. He was taking a class at AVSO, and so he's helping that. And then also he's doing some more targets, Meyer variables, and other variable stars. And I just wanted to show a few of the graphs that at AVSO. So these are all these dots here are either the B or the B filter, and these are all the variable stars. Basically, it's plotting the brightness level of that star. There's B1117 Hercules, and you can see the plot here of the three filters, B, V, R, and the four filters, B, V, R, and I. So Peter Bilo, another group member, is also doing some variable star work. He's also part of AVSO. And in this case, here is some of his stars that he submitted. Not all of them have been put into AVSO database, but some of them have been. Some failed because maybe it got cloudy that night and we got bad data. But these are all the targets that we've put in. So we've been doing some variable star work. We're doing actual science that actually we're giving to AVSO. Exoplanets. So we suspected we could do exoplanet work. We're sure, but so we got a few requests, and so we actually got HAT B, HAT P3b, and you can actually see there is a dip. And so this is roughly a 4 to 5 hour transit, and we actually got some good data. So Gary Shaw was the one that requested some of these exoplanet targets, and so he was the guinea pig, and guess what? It worked great. So at least on the brighter ones, we don't know what our lower limit is on looking at exoplanets. We'll find out, because one of the problems with exoplanets, though, as opposed to the variable star work, with the variable star work, you can do it, throughout the night and each night. With exoplanet work, you have to block off a chunk of time, because it's a continuous measurement from starting point to end point. And you like to be in one night so that it's not discontinuous data. So we still have to do that manually. So we actually have to put in all these targets, start time, end time, what the exposure is. So we don't have a good script file for that at the moment. So observation for educators. So we've got a few people that have been asking for data. So out of Norwich, University of Vermont, Elizabeth-ATEM, we did some variable star photometry. The University of New Hampshire, John Forte, exoplanet photometry. He actually used some of the data that we had, we made it available, and they used it for classwork. And then we've had other people requesting, or we want to have collaboration with them. One is Kai Kai, a member, and he's a member at large. He's also a teacher at the Dexter Southfield Place Center Observatory. We also have Carolyn Oden at the Phillips Academy. We've been talking to her about doing some collaboration work. She wants to do some exoplanet collaborations with us. She also has a system at her college, and so she wants to do simultaneous observations with her setup and our setup as well. Silas Laycock, who is, of course, you saw, just became a member. He's at UMass Lowell, and we're talking to him to see what kind of programs he would like to do. And of course, Tim Brothers at the MIT Walsh Observatory, which is only maybe a mile away from the Westford Observatory. We were talking to him to do some collaboration. So the one observation proposal form we have is the photometry one. So Chris Elledge and Peter Below collaborated. We all got together and tried to find out what data is applicable to putting in data. So this is actually a spreadsheet. And so what it is, people would put in, write up this form. They would put in the target, the filter they use, what the timing they want to do, why, etc. We would look at, the group will look at the proposal to see if it's reasonable and a valid proposal for science. And then this would then put in, so Chris had made a converter to take this Excel spreadsheet to an RTM type document, which then can be imported into ACP. So we don't have to actually type in all this commands. It will actually take this data and just import it right into ACP. So it makes it easier for us. Now, we are working on pretty pictures, the same kind of form for pretty pictures. We're working on the same form for exoplanets. Again, it's work in progress. We're slowly going through this, and we're trying to work out the bugs. So we're asking people that are helping us collaborate, fill out the form, tell us what you think, tell us what to improve, and we'll make that, implement. So I wanted to end with showing pretty pictures. We've gone through all the science and all the heavy stuff, but let's look at photos. So remember, all these were taken by the Mittelman-ATMoB Observatory, but various people took these pictures and processed them home. So Chris, these are like, oh yeah, so vid or vid? Yeah. So this is the Christmas tree cluster area, and you can see this whole area. And again, this is I think, Chris, is this a RGB or a pseudo RGB image?
No, this was SHO.
SHO, okay. Next, we have a planetary nebula, Abell 21, the Medusa Nebula. There's some galaxies, M105, NGC 3384, and NGC 3389. M106. And of course, remember, so what's interesting is these images were taken through scientific filters. So they're not an exact RGB translation. So we had to do a little more work to get this to be somewhat color balanced. So here's some astro images by Christine Zacher. There's an M3 globular cluster. Again, she's using the data that we collected and then processing. Here's M101. And here's some of my pictures. This was one of the first pictures we introduced. It was the tadpole, the IC410 of the tadpoles. Now this is a narrowband image, and this is the next one is pseudo RGB, using the narrowband filters. Here's just the luminance of the Horsehead Nebula, the Rosette, and this was one of the early pictures. I mean, we're talking in the early days. And what's interesting about this is galaxy, it's the fireworks galaxy. And the reason they call it the fireworks galaxy is because a lot of supernovas are discovered in this galaxy. And the reason I took this picture is I want to see how dim we can go. So you notice that star right up there is confirmed, magnitude 20.20. So at the Clubhouse site, even with the suburban skies and the light pollution we have, we're still getting down to 20th magnitude. So this is interesting. So I looked at the coordinates in the Jet Propulsion Laboratories database, and I went and found where the James Webb Space Telescope was going. And on its outbound track to the Lagrange point, I decided I'll take a picture, I'll aim to a point in space, and then I made a movie. I made an animated GIF. And you can see it, that's where the arrow is. You can see it moving along. So these are the interesting, not normal pictures that you would take of various objects. And here's another one. So it's a little hard to see. Let's see, yeah, but it's not showing very well. But right here, that's just the tail to the DART impact. So that's the comet picture. Unfortunately, I was only able to stack like 4 or 5 pictures to be able to get that comet. It's a lot. You can see it better on the screen here. It's not showing on the screen. Maybe on the monitors on the top, you may be able to see it better. But the problem was the stacking software, that head of the comet was so dim, or actually the asteroid was so dim, my tracking, the software to stack, couldn't see it. So I actually had to hand stack this. So this is manually stacking. So you notice it's kind of wiggling a little bit because I wasn't exactly on point. So I just wanted to give a shout out to all of the core members. These are the core. Now, there are other people that helped us, but they maybe came and went just a few times. But the core members, these are all the core members that we had. Peter Vila, Bruce Berger, Kai, James Chamberlain, Chris Elledge, Pierre Florent, Arnie Hendon, Tom McDonough, Ani Myers, Aaron Salisky, and me. So thank you very much. And any questions? Yes, in that.
Yeah, Al, if you actually go back to the DART impact and you do look up the monitors, you can see it. It's very clear.
Yeah.
Stuff.
Yeah, you can't see it on the screen here, but you can look at the
lights
monitor.
down, it's pretty clear where the impact is. You can see it. Yeah.
And actually what I did is I looked, I saw, I think spaceweather.com, somebody had actually taken an image. And I said, hey, we can do that too. So I decided to try for it. Anything else? Any questions? Do we have questions from the online?
Mario has a hand up.
Yeah, I just more of a comment than a question. I'm glad you got the Sloan filters. They're a much better filter set than the old Johnson filters. The Johnson filters were developed before modern techniques. And if you look at the light curves, which you demonstrated, you only capture, it actually excludes quite a bit of light. The Sloan filters were developed around the year 2000, and they're flat-topped, and there's essentially no light break. Plus, they cleanly separate the green from the red and from the blue, unlike the Johnson filters, which overlap. So they're both the standard now, and the Sloan filters are much better. So it's good that you got those.
Yeah, let me go back to the that graph. I'm going to go back quite a ways here. Yeah, here it is. So here's the flat, right? So, yeah, those are the chromas, yeah.
Yeah, see the clean separation and the flat top? You're basically capturing every photon. If you look at the Johnson, you see overlap and you lose quite a bit of light.
Yeah, so there's quite a few gaps here. Now, the only reason we looked at the Johnson cousins was because that's what the database that AVSO was using.
I understand.
But then
that's because the AVSO database goes back to 1912, where this is a new century and we got much better techniques. And they accept, all you got to do is tell them which filter you got, and they will accept the observations. So pretty much everyone's gone to Sloan filters now. I would give up your attempt to get the Johnson filters.
Unfortunately, we're having trouble getting the Sloan filters also. We got we got 2 of the filters, but we still are waiting for the companies to release the other 2.
All right. The other advantage of the Sloan filters is you can use them for red, green, blue, which you can't really do that with the Johnson filters.
There was a question up here.
Yeah, can you make like a couple of slides that summarize all those specs of this optical system and such, and the filters available, you know, focal length, et cetera?
Well, we're gonna have this video will be
okay,
YouTube. Yeah.
but a couple of slides would be a lot easier.
Yeah, we have single page things with all the specs.
Okay.
We just have to put them someplace where we can find them easily. They're on the shared drive.
But we have to release it. We have to put it somewhere that's more
We should
visible.
put them on the club webpage.
Page or something, or webpage.
Yes, Phil.
Going forward, Al, what's the confidence level that the rodents will not make a reappearance?
I didn't show it, but I actually put I decided after we put the plate up, that Bruce put the plate up, I decided to actually put aluminum foil in every whole cable track, you know, any port that came into the building, I put in, you know, we've been trying to cover it up, everything up, so that nothing can get into the building, we hope. We don't think they can get, we blocked the entrance with a cable track, so I don't think they're gonna get back into the mount, but they can probably still get into the building. I mean, there are still gaps on the roof section. There are no gaps down below because I think I plugged up all the cable holes that came in from the outside. Yeah.
Just a quick follow-up. We've got a small RV travel trailer. We did have some rodent issues, and we bought something that's non-toxic called Fresh Cab, and since we got that, no reappearance of the rodents. Right? It'll keep them out, perhaps, of the building area.
Yeah, well, we'll try a lot of different methods to try to keep them out. We don't like to use poison, even though there is poison in there right now. We need to take it out of there. It's not a good solution because then other animals can eat the rodents, and then it transfers on to others. So we don't like that method. Anything else, Chris?
No.
Okay, all right. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you, Al. It's an incredible amount of work that's been done to get the thing online and continuously improving. It's exciting to see where it's going.
Are we done?
Yep, so with that, we'll officially close the meeting. Next meeting will be April 13th, 8 p.m., same place. Thanks again to Al. Thank you so much.